Hi, and welcome to Care Managers Australia. My name is Guy. Today, I'm going to take you through the screening phase of MyAgeCare with the aim to get the correct assessment for your parents. When you log into the MyAgeCare website, the first change you might see if you've been here before is that you cannot phone for a screening or to register someone anymore. You have to start with the online form, and this is probably a little bit different. If it's your first time, then just follow the steps that I'll show you today, and you should hopefully get through it without too many issues. A couple of things to consider. First one is to be honest and accurate with what you put in. Um, you if you put in something that's not true, or you over exaggerate something, the next stage when you have an assessor come and assess your parents, you'll most likely be found out and probably end up at the back of the queue. This is quite rare anyway. Yeah, because you want to get your parents the right care. You're not here to try to sort of jig the system. The second thing I'd say is to make sure that which happens more often is that people underreport what they need. So try to be very specific. And I'd recommend you, before you start the screening, is spend a day or two walking around with your parents and just sort of noticing and observing all of those small things they need help with. Do they need help getting out of a chair? Is someone always picking them up? Is someone always sort of holding onto their arm? And just sort of try to make a list of all those daily activities because they're very important. A lot of people may fixate on a medical condition or something like that, but then not talk about the day-to-day activities and then be disappointed because they're not getting the care they need. So it's very important to just be very specific and come up with all those daily examples, even though they may sound trivial. Those are the actual services you can get help with, or the funding for the services. And um, if you don't demonstrate that to the assessor, they can't give you those the approval for those services. So very important. So while you're being accurate, is to really just be very deliberate and very detailed in all the daily examples. So on the website, you can scroll down. There's a couple of different places you can go to. You Down in the middle, the left-hand picture here is if your parents are applying or if you're applying on their behalf with their consent. You can tick on this middle option. And what you're looking for on the next page is apply for an assessment online. Click on that one. This then starts the screening process. It'll explain how it works. It'll take about 30 minutes. Um, so we'll go through the first part with you as well. Once you start, this will then ask you, there's three parts, part A, B, and C. Part A is the screening part. Part B and C is where you register your parents' details and your details. The important thing is if you have registered your parents before, then call instead of doing this process, because otherwise you'll end up with two MyAgeCare records, and that leads to a lot of issues when you're trying to manage care. If you're unsure, phone first, and then they might direct you back to the website, but that'll just save you a lot of hassle, hours and hours of hassle down the track. If this is your first time registering your parents, go to the next button down here and we'll start the screening process. So the assessment's for someone else. This is for my parents. So I'll click next. The next question, you put in the date of birth. We'll put in the date of birth here. And then the next question is if they are of Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander origin. If they're under 65, but they do identify, they can start getting services at the age of 50. My parents are not. We'll move on to the next stage. The next question is, do they want help at home? Are you looking for approvals to residential aged care, or a bit of both? I'm just looking for help at home. You can click next. This part I will slow down. This is the most important part of the screening process, and this is where most of my clients or most of the people I've worked with have come a little bit unstuck, especially if you breeze through this um, and don't. So the long and short of it is if you don't tick any of the if you don't, so the question here is which daily activities do your parents need help with? If you don't tick any of these, then they'll be denied care because the second criteria is that they need some form of help with their daily activities. So they may have tons of pain, they may have a serious medical conditions, but if you don't show the assessment service that they need help with their daily activities, they're not going to give you approvals for services. So it's very important. This is why I say before the time is just sort of make a list of all those things your parents do during the day where they need a little bit of help, even if it's a little bit of help, like a little arm out here, or you've got a little aid there or so on. That's where I'd say you want to tick these because the next section you can go through the details of how serious it is. So in my first example, my parents, they could get out of the chair, but probably not. And then you usually need someone to sort of hold their arm out. So that's why I tick this one. Um, they're using a walking frame, but once they're at the toilet, they can do everything themselves. So I'm going to leave this one blank. Um, and when they're having a bath or a shower, they we actually using the sponges and the wipes. So we will tick that one because they can't have a shower on their own. She doesn't need help getting dressed, so I'll leave that out. She's eating fine. She can make her own meals. She can take her own meds and know she's there. Basic housework probably needs a bit of help there because other people are doing that. That's the other thing too, is if somebody else is doing it, then you sort of have to imagine it a little bit. Can they do it themselves without no one else in the house? And if the question's they can't do it, then that's so the question is not, is it being done? The question is, can they do it themselves? And that's where a lot of people get stuck because they go, oh no, somebody else is doing it. That's fine. But actually, they can't do it themselves with no one else there. And that's why you're showing that you need help with that. Even if you don't use the service, you're just showing what they need help with. So she can, well, she could drive, but she can't anymore because of her illnesses. Uh, Grocery one, I had to have a think about. She does come with us, but she couldn't do it herself because she needs lots of stopping and people need to carry things and so on. And she doesn't need help with the bills. Once you've had a look through, make sure you tick the ones you need a bit of help with, and then you can click next. And then this goes through the next section. So what's going to happen is if I go back, each one that I tick now, it'll now ask you for the level or the intensity or the severity of help needed. So if I go back, the first one is getting out of beds or chairs. You click next. It'll now ask you how much help do your parents need. So so with this one, getting out of a bed or chair, she doesn't need a hoist. Um, she she's not completely unable, but she does need help like a bed stick. So that's why I've ticked this one. If you tick all of them completely, so if you tick the first option is always completely independent. If you tick this for all of them, again you'll be denied care because that means they don't need any help. So again, be honest, but have a think about when you go, oh no, they can do it, but only when I'm helping them get out. So you have to sort of really think about, like, look at how they get out of the bed or how they get out of the chair and look at where they need help. Are they hanging onto the side of the bed? Even though they're doing it, if it doesn't look safe, then you'd say, well, actually, they do need a bit of help there. And you go to the next one. So when they're walking, she uses a walking frame. Watch out for this one. They talk about using a walking stick. If somebody's using a walking stick, they're not fully independent. So this question is not written very well. If they're depending on a walking stick, I would justify that they do need some help, and that's where you can discuss that with the assessor. You can say yes, they're using a walking stick, but if you take the walking stick away, they're probably going to have lots of falls, and for example, and so on and so on. So we go to the next question. Again, I don't like this question. If they're using grab rails, they're not fully independent. If they're depending on the grab rails, so just be careful of this question. Again, if they're using a bath or a shower, this one we use bed sponges, so that's why we've picked this one. But just tick the level, don't fall for that. If they're using grab rails, they should be getting some help. So even if the rails are there, if they, if they're renting and they move somewhere else without grab rails, you're going to need funding to put those rails in because they're not cheap. Um, so that's why you'd be looking for support there. You can click next, move on to the next one. Can they do basic housework? Definitely not using a vacuum. Those things are heavy. Um, when you fit and fit and healthy, that it doesn't feel like hard work. But anyone with back shoulder issues or any sort of osteoarthritis, vacuums are quite deadly. So she needs some help. Can they drive on their own? Somebody else needs to drive with her. This one's a bit tricky. Can they? So if for example, if it's my mum and my dad drives her everywhere, she can't drive. So that's why you have to say somebody else is driving. You can't say, oh no, she can drive everywhere, but it's somebody else driving. So sometimes you have to stop and think, think through the logic of it. Because she might say, oh no, I don't need help with driving, but it's like, yes, somebody else is driving you. And that's where you sometimes have to just sort of workshop it a little bit. Can they go shopping for groceries? So again, in this situation, she comes with us. But we couldn't leave her on her own there for three. She couldn't go there herself. She couldn't go there 3, 4 hours on her own. She's with us. She takes lots of help if we weren't there. That's kind of the question. So it's easy to go, oh, we're with her, we're doing all the work. But you have to imagine, what if no one's there with her? Then that's what you need to explain. She would need help with somebody carrying the groceries, somebody driving her there, someone helping, maybe help pushing, if she's in a wheelchair to help push. The next question is, are they receiving carer support? So we're helping. We don't have, so there's formal services or this middle one. If you've got funding like Care Finders, NDIS, any other kind of aged care, you could tick the middle one. If it's informal, families, friends, partners, then you tick the top one. If they're receiving no support, if they're on their own and there's no one with them, then you can tick that one. But in this one, we're providing care now. But things could change. We could move. We could work full time. So that's why you want to just kind of be specific there. Once the next part, the last part is looking at specific instances. This helps to kind of demonstrate the urgency of the assessment you need. So I'd say if any of these have happened in the last 2 weeks, or if they're currently in hospital and they had a fall, you could tick both of those. You just need to sort of be able to justify that was maybe 2 weeks ago, but they're in the middle of discharge or so on. As long as you can justify what you've put in. So I'll put in